It was clear that she had not accepted this outcome, and as she turned and disappeared into the shadows, a sense of foreboding settled over me. The cheers and laughter of the villagers echoed through the sacred grove long after Itua had been proclaimed queen. I watched as the people approached her, hesitant at first, but gradually more confident. They offered their congratulations and blessings, some bowing in respect while others simply nodded. Itua received them all with grace, her smile gentle and her demeanor calm. The gods had spoken, and at last, it seemed that the kingdom was ready to accept the new queen. But beneath the celebration, a storm was brewing. I had seen the look on Efua's face as she disappeared into the forest, her expression dark with anger and betrayal. It was a look that chilled me to the core, for though the gods had made their choice, not everyone was willing to accept it. Efua had been groomed for queenship her entire life, and the sudden rise of an outcast threatened everything she had worked for. In the days following Itua's coronation, the kingdom slowly began to settle into its new reality. The water source that Itua had found continued to provide relief to the drought-stricken land. With the clans now unified, trade and commerce picked up, bringing new prosperity to Benin. It seemed that Itua's rule was off to a good start, and for a brief moment, hope filled the air. But then, the first whispers of unrest began to surface. Rumors spread through the market and village squares. Talk of those who were unhappy with the queen's selection. How can an outcast be worthy? Some murmured, the gods must have been deceived. Others claimed, it wasn't long before Efua, now bitter and resentful, began to rally those who opposed Itua's rule. She visited the homes of the nobles and the elders, speaking of tradition, of how an outcast is forbidden to step into the palace of the Orba, let alone becoming a queen, of the way things had always been. Her words were sharp, her eyes blazing with the fire of a woman who refused to be cast aside. And slowly, she began to gather supporters, sowing seeds of doubt in the minds of the people. I watched all of this unfold with growing unease. As a member of the Orba's court and a witness to the trials, I had seen Itua prove herself time and again. Yet, Efua's words carried weight among those who held tight to tradition. The kingdom was teetering on the edge of conflict, and I feared what would happen if it fell into chaos. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of red and gold, I made my way to the palace to warn Itua of the brewing unrest. The guards at the entrance nodded solemnly as I passed, their faces betraying their concern. Inside, the palace was quiet, the torches along the walls casting flickering shadows across the hall. I found Itua in the throne room, sitting with her eyes closed, her hands resting on the carved armrests of the throne. She looked calm, but I could sense the tension in the air. She opened her eyes as I approached, fixing me with a gaze that seemed to pierce through my very soul. Your Majesty, I began, bowing my head, there is unrest among the people. Efua has been stirring doubts about your rule. She speaks of tradition and the will of the nobles. Itua nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. I have heard the whispers, she replied, her voice soft but steady, and I knew this would come. Change is never easy, especially when it threatens the beliefs of those who have held power for so long. I hesitated, unsure of how to continue. What will you do? I asked finally. Efua gathers more followers each day. The kingdom is on the brink of division. Itua sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly as if the weight of the world rested upon them. I will do what I have always done, she said quietly. I will confront this head on, with honesty and strength. The people must see that I am not here to destroy tradition, but to build upon it in a way that brings unity and prosperity. Her words were filled with resolve, and yet, I could not shake the feeling that we were standing on the edge of something terrible. As I left the throne room, A sense of foreboding settled over me, like the calm before a storm. That night, the kingdom was plunged into darkness. A thick cloud cover obscured the moon and stars, casting an unnatural shadow over the land. The streets were quiet, the only sound the faint rustling of leaves in the wind. It was as if the earth itself was holding its breath, waiting for the storm to break. I had been unable to sleep, my mind filled with worries about what was to come. As I paced the corridors of the palace, I noticed a figure moving silently in the shadows. It was Efua. She was dressed in a dark cloak, her movements quick and furtive. My heart skipped a beat as I realized what was happening. Without thinking, I followed her through the corridors, down the steps, and out into the palace gardens. She moved with purpose, heading toward the sacred grove where the symbols of Itua's trials were kept. My breath caught in my throat as I saw that she was not alone. Several nobles and guards, those who had pledged loyalty to her, followed closely behind. They reached the grove, and Efua turned to face her followers. "The gods have been deceived," she hissed, her voice filled with venom. "This outcast has no right to the throne. We shall destroy the symbols of her trials and erase her false legacy. The kingdom shall be restored to its rightful order." A murmur of agreement rippled through the group, and they moved forward to begin their task. They tore at the plants Itua had used in the healing trial, scattered the earth from the spring she had found, and reached for the carvings that depicted the unity she had brought among the clans. "No," I cried out, stepping into the clearing. "Stop this madness. The gods have chosen Itua. You defy them with this act." Efua turned to me, her eyes burning with fury. "The gods chose wrong," she spat. "This is the will of the people, the will of tradition. Stand aside, or you, too, will be swept away." Before I could respond, a great wind surged through the grove, howling like 1,000 voices in anger. The ground beneath us began to shake, more violently than it ever had before. The nobles stumbled, cries of fear escaping their lips as they clung to the trees for support. A blinding light erupted from the earth, forcing us all to shield our eyes. When the light dimmed, we saw that the ground had split open, revealing a hidden chamber beneath the grove. Inside the chamber were carvings, ancient and worn, depicting a queen who brought unity and healing to the kingdom. The queen in the carvings bore a striking resemblance to Itua. A voice, deep and thunderous, filled the air, reverberating through our very bones. "Fools," it bellowed, "you dare defy the will of the gods? The outcast is the chosen one, not by blood or tradition, but by the strength of her spirit. Seek not to destroy what you do not understand." The light faded, leaving us in darkness once more. The grove fell silent, the weight of the gods' words hanging heavily in the air. I looked around at the faces of the nobles and guards. They were pale and stricken, their eyes wide with terror and realization. Efua staggered back, her hands trembling. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. It was clear that the gods had made their final decree, one that could not be challenged.